Welcome to today's deep dive. We're incredibly thrilled you're joining us today because we've got a really fascinating mission. We are going to unpack a framework that solves, probably one of the most persistent and expensive tensions in modern business.
Oh, absolutely. It's a massive issue.
Right. So we're looking at this brilliant article published just today, actually, March 14, 2026, by Shish S. And it's titled From Annual Reports to Startup Opportunities.
Yeah, it's a great read.
But before we get into the actual mechanics of it, I want you to picture this scenario for a second. Imagine you're standing on the edge of this massive multi-lane highway, and in the center lane, you've got this enormous, heavily armored freight truck.
Just a total behemoth.
Exactly. It is carrying thousands of tons of cargo, and it's moving at a very deliberate, steady, 50 miles per hour. It cannot turn quickly. It takes miles just to hit the brakes. And that truck is your classic large-scale corporate enterprise.
Which is the epitome of complex systems.
Right.
Just massive scale and really careful coordination.
Right. But then, in the very next lane, zipping between all the cars at like 150 miles per hour, you have a fleet of high-performance racing motorcycles. They're agile, they're taking these crazy hairpin turns, they are, frankly, literally swapping out engine parts while moving.
Yeah.
And those are the tech startups. They're building new capabilities at just incredible speed.
Yeah.
So the people driving the freight truck, they're looking at the motorcycles thinking, we desperately need that speed to survive.
Right. Because if they don't adapt, they die.
Yes. And the motorcycles are looking at the truck thinking, well, we need that massive cargo payload, that scale, to actually make any real money. But the question is, how do you bridge that massive gap? Like, how do you get the speed of the startup into the engine of the enterprise safely without causing just a catastrophic corporate car crash?
What's fascinating here is that the solution to this incredibly modern, high-tech innovation problem, this massive gap between cutting-edge AI startups and legacy enterprises,
Yeah.
it actually starts with one of the oldest, most traditional, and frankly, driest corporate documents in existence.
The annual report.
The annual report.
The giant PDF that usually puts people right to sleep.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if we want to fix an enterprise's problems using startup technology, we first have to figure out what those problems actually are. And rather than guessing, or hiring a fleet of consultants to do some 6-month discovery phase, the author is telling us the problems are hiding right in plain sight.
Yeah, because when most people, or even, most casual investors, open up a public company's annual report, they flip straight to the back.
Right, they want the numbers.
Exactly. They want the balance sheet, the income statement, the hard financial results. They just want to know, did the revenue line go up or down? But Shish S points out that for anyone working in innovation or strategy, the real value isn't the math.
It's the narrative.
Yes, it's the narrative. The absolute gold mine is the strategic signals hidden inside the actual text of the document.
It almost makes me think of, like, reading a corporate diary. You're skipping the boring math homework to find the juicy gossip about what the executive team is actually stressed out about at 2 in the morning.
That's a great way to put it. Public companies are legally required to disclose what keeps them up at night. And the author highlights a few specific sections you should be scouring. So you've got the CEO letter, the risk factors, the management discussion and analysis, which is the MDA, and the operations sections.
So you aren't looking for revenue projections there.
No, not at all. You are looking for recurring themes. Like you read the risk factors to see if they're terrified about supply chain resilience because of geopolitical shifts.
Right.
Or you read the MD&A to see if they're suddenly pouring massive amounts of capital into customer experience initiatives.
Yes.
Maybe because a disruptive competitor is stealing their market share. You're just combing through, looking for mentions of aging infrastructure, workforce productivity bottlenecks, or massive gaps in their data pipelines. These sections reveal exactly where leadership attention and, honestly, more importantly, where the budget is actively focused.
Okay, I love the diary analogy, but let's be totally real for a second here. These are highly, highly polished documents.
Oh, absolutely.
They go through 12 rounds of PR review, legal review, corporate communication sanitization before they ever see the light of day. Everything is written in that very specific, impenetrable corporate speak. Like, we are proactively leveraging cross-functional synergies to optimize downstream deliverables.
Right.
So finding the actual bleeding neck problems and all that spin seems kind of impossible. It often just reads like a marketing brochure disguised as a legal filing.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to remember the strict regulatory environment these documents exist in. Yes, the corporate communications team polishes them to a shine, but they are legally binding disclosures to shareholders.
So they can't just lie.
Exactly. The legal department is reviewing them with a completely different lens than PR. If leadership fails to disclose a massive operational vulnerability or some serious competitive pressure, and the stock tanks 6 months later because of that exact issue,
Oh, they get sued.
yes, the executive team is legally liable for misleading investors. The PR team wants them to sound invincible, sure, but the legal team forces them to list their existential threats. So while an issue might be wrapped in thick corporate jargon, the underlying anxieties, the raw operational challenges, they absolutely have to be on the page.
Wow. So they are legally obligated to tell you exactly what is broken.
Exactly. And what suggests is that you distill these legally mandated signals down into what he calls an innovation problem set.
Okay.
You take all those paragraphs about macroeconomic headwinds impacting vendor lead times, and you translate that into a core theme, like supply chain resilience.
That makes total sense.
And the moment you do that, the entire exercise shifts from passive analysis to active opportunity. You stop asking, how did they perform last quarter? And you start asking, which emerging technologies can solve this specific operational bottleneck right now?
Which brings us directly to the startup lane of our highway. We have the enterprise's problem set documented. We know the freight truck has a transmission issue. Now we need the solution. But the author points out a massive, almost comical language barrier between what startups are selling and what enterprises are actually trying to buy.
Oh, the translation gap is immense. It is
Yep.
arguably the #1 reason enterprise innovation pilots fail before they even launch.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think about how startups market themselves, right? You go to a Series A startup's website, and the copy is incredibly dense and technical.
Very technical.
They are talking about autonomous AI agents, predictive operational analytics, behavioral intelligence platforms, real-time unstructured data ingestion pipelines. But the enterprise leader, the person who actually authored that annual report, doesn't wake up in a cold sweat worrying about a lack of behavioral intelligence pipelines.
No, of course not. They worry about customer churn. They worry about their operating margins getting squeezed. The enterprise executive is solely focused on business outcomes.
Right.
They do not care about the underlying architecture unless it actually moves the needle on a metric they are bonused on.
It's like the startups are running around trying to sell raw engine parts. They're holding up this beautifully machined piece of metal saying, look at the specs on this titanium camshaft. Look at the throughput of these fuel injectors.
Yeah, and the enterprise executive is just standing there exhausted.
Saying, I literally just want a car that gets me to Chicago faster and uses less gas. So how do we practically translate these abstract, hyper-technical terms into concrete business solutions without getting completely lost in translation? Like, if a startup says they do behavioral intelligence, what does that even mean to a retail executive?
That requires a rigorous process of mapping, and it demands a strict order of operations. You never start with the technology.
Right.
You never start by holding up the camshaft. You always start with the enterprise challenge you extracted from the annual report. Let's stick with your behavioral intelligence example. In the startup world, behavioral intelligence might mean an algorithm that tracks exactly how a user hovers their mouse over a screen
Okay.
or how long they pause on a mobile app before closing it. It's a technical capability.
Yeah.
But you don't pitch the mouse tracking. You reverse engineer it. You look at the annual report and see the enterprise is bleeding digital subscribers.
So the enterprise problem is digital customer retention.
Yes. So you look at the startups tool and ask, can this mouse tracking algorithm predict if a user is frustrated and about to abandon their shopping cart?
Right.
If yes, you've just translated behavioral intelligence into cart abandonment reduction.
Wow, okay. That's a huge shift in perspective.
And what is really crucial here, and the author makes a point to emphasize this, is that enterprise problems are rarely solved by a single magic bullet. The problems are just too complex. Often, the most effective solution requires combining several complementary startup technologies.
Oh, interesting, like stacking them.
Exactly. You might need one startup's real-time data ingestion tool just to gather the unstructured data,
Right.
which then feeds into a second startup's AI agent that actually reaches out to the frustrated customer with a targeted discount code.
Doing this translation in your head or just like throwing sticky notes on a whiteboard seems like a recipe for absolute chaos,
Yeah.
especially when you're layering multiple startups together.
It would be a nightmare.
Right. So, to make this systematic instead of just a guessing game, the author introduces a very specific, structured framework to bridge the gap.
Step 4 of the methodology. The author brings in the business model canvas.
Which, for you listening, you might already be familiar with Alexander Osterwalder's Business Model Canvas. It's kind of the standard architectural blueprint of how a company creates, delivers, and captures value.
It really is the gold standard for this.
Yeah, so it's got 9 components. You've got the front of the house, right, like your customer segments, your value proposition, your channels.
Exactly, and your customer relationships and revenue streams.
Right, and then you have the boiler room in the back, the key activities, key resources, key partners, and of course, your cost structure. I love the blueprint analogy because it lets an executive see exactly where the plumbing goes, where the electrical is, and most importantly, which walls are load-bearing.
That's spot on. Innovation usually crashes and burns when a company buys a shiny new piece of software, but doesn't actually understand which load-bearing wall it's supposed to support within their specific business model.
Right.
Canvas prevents that.
But I gotta ask, does mapping a highly complex emerging technology onto a static 15-year-old framework actually work in the real world? Like, it feels like we're at risk of just playing corporate bingo here. Mapping something as dynamic as a generative AI orchestration layer to a static box labeled key activities seems like trying to force a square peg into a round hole just to satisfy a slide deck.
I get why you'd say that, but it's the exact opposite of a buzzword exercise. It works because the canvas forces a complete ruthless shift in focus. It rips the conversation away from look at how cool this neural network is and forces it entirely onto the mechanics of business impact.
Okay, walk me through that.
Let's break down the mechanics of how an AI orchestration layer actually works. In traditional software, a program might alert a human that a server is overheating. The human has to decide what to do. An AI agent, or an orchestration layer, doesn't just alert, it has the autonomy to take action.
Right, it does it for you.
It shuts down the server, reroutes the traffic to a backup data center, and automatically files a maintenance ticket.
It literally performs the task itself.
Exactly. So a startup pitches you this incredibly advanced autonomous AI. Instead of getting bogged down in the parameters of the AI model, you bring it to the canvas. You immediately map it to the cost structure block.
Because you're avoiding a server meltdown.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You are actively avoiding catastrophic millions of dollars in downtime repair bills. Then you map it to the key activities block because your entire IT maintenance schedule shifts from reactive firefighting to proactive management.
Oh, I see.
And it dramatically alters the value proposition block, too, because your software infrastructure becomes exponentially more reliable for your end user.
So you aren't really pitching an AI orchestration layer anymore. You are pitching a tangible reduction in the cost structure and a streamlined optimization of key activities.
Precisely. Take that behavioral intelligence tool we discussed earlier, the one tracking user frustration. Where does that map?
I mean, I guess that maps directly to customer relationships.
Yes, it maps to customer relationships. It maps to channels because you are engaging them differently on mobile versus desktop. And ultimately, because it prevents cart abandonment, it directly drives the revenue streams block.
That is brilliant.
The Canvas connects the abstract innovation directly to the physical way the company generates cash. The enterprise leaders can look at this one-page blueprint and say, this startup reinforces our customer retention wall.
It totally demystifies the technology. It strips away the TechCrunch headlines and boils it down to operational reality. Okay, so we have our blueprint, we have our translations, we know the annual report signals. Now, how does this actually become a reality inside the business? Because having a great theory mapped out on a canvas doesn't actually change the company.
No, it doesn't. And that's why the final piece of the author's puzzle is step 5. Turning these insights into actionable recommendations and introducing what he calls an ecosystem player.
So how do you make that pitch?
Well, you have to structure the pitch properly. You can't just slide a filled-out canvas across a boardroom table and expect a massive check.
Yeah, it's not going to fly.
The author lays out a very specific template for this. Every opportunity you present to leadership has to include 4 concrete elements. First, the problem being solved, which you anchor directly to the annual report so they can't dismiss it.
Clever.
Second, the startup capability involved are raw engine parts. Third, the business impact, which you just proved using the Kansas mapping. And fourth, potential pilot programs. You have to give the enterprise a safe, contained way to test the waters without betting the whole farm.
Makes total sense. And the article uses a large retailer as a prime example of putting all this together, right?
Yes. Imagine a massive national retail chain. Their annual report reveals deep anxieties about store operational efficiency and a drop in in-store customer engagement.
So using this framework, the recommendation isn't some vague, we need an AI strategy. The recommendations become hyper-targeted. It would be something like, let's improve our physical store operations by deploying an AI orchestration startup to autonomously manage our staff schedules based on real-time foot traffic.
Exactly.
Or let's instrument our physical aisles with IoT sensors to generate operational analytics. Or maybe let's strengthen our customer relationships by integrating conversational AI directly into our store's mobile app to help people find products on the shelves.
Notice how every single one of those recommendations pairs a highly specific capability with a deeply relevant business outcome.
Yeah.
It is strategically sound because it was birthed from the anxieties in the annual report. It is operationally practical because it was
Right.
pressure tested on the canvas.
Mhm.
And it is actually innovative because it utilizes a nimble startup capability instead of some sluggish legacy vendor.
So what does this all mean for the big picture? Because right at the end of the article, the author introduces the role of Microsoft for startups. And honestly, I was reading this section and it sounds essentially like a high-end corporate dating
A
service.
corporate dating service. I like that.
Right. But instead of matching people for romance, Microsoft is playing matchmaker, aligning enterprise capability gaps with curated operational solutions. But here's my question. If this five-step framework is so incredibly logical, if the annual reports are completely public documents and the business model canvas is a widely understood tool, why is a massive intermediary like Microsoft for startups even necessary?
That's a very fair question.
Like, why can't the enterprise just read their own report, map the canvas, and call the startup directly?
This raises an important question, and it actually goes right back to your opening visualization of the freight truck and the racing motorcycles.
Yeah.
The author explicitly states, innovation happens at the intersection. Enterprises bring massive scale, intense regulatory complexity, and incredibly high stakes.
Right.
If a startup's new scheduling software crashes while they're testing it in a garage, it's a bummer. But if that same software crashes inside a global retailer's supply chain during the holiday rush,
It is a multi-million-dollar disaster.
exactly. The enterprise has an incredibly low tolerance for the motorcycle's inherent risk.
Procurement alone would block the deal immediately.
Oh, without a doubt. So the intermediary is crucial because startups aren't just discovered in the wild and instantly plugged into a Fortune 500 company. They have to be developed and hardened.
Ah, I see.
Microsoft for Startups works closely with massive enterprise customers to identify their priorities, basically executing this annual report mapping at a global scale. And then they actively recruit, curate, and develop startups within the Microsoft ecosystem to ensure they are actually enterprise ready.
Enterprise ready. That is the critical hurdle.
It is. It means the startup isn't just a clever algorithm. It means they have the SOC 2 security compliance, the data privacy guardrails, and the underlying cloud infrastructure to handle real business problems at a massive global scale. Microsoft isn't just introducing the truck driver to the motorcycle rider.
They're providing the engineering environment to ensure the motorcycle's engine can actually be integrated into the truck without blowing up the transmission.
Exactly.
That curation piece acts as the invisible glue. It allows massive organizations to augment and accelerate their innovation with confidence, but it also gives the startup something they desperately need to survive, which is meaningful, paid opportunities to solve real problems at scale.
It's a beautifully symbiotic relationship facilitated by a trusted ecosystem that removes the friction.
And it is all structured by frameworks that force everyone, from the tech founder to the corporate CEO, to speak the exact same language of business value. It really is a masterclass in pragmatic innovation. So let's tie all of this together for everyone listening.
Sounds good.
We started with a massive, dangerous gap between two very different worlds, the speed of the startup and the scale of the enterprise. What Sheesh S has given us is a highly structured, repeatable, and almost scientific process to bridge it. Real innovation isn't a magical light bulb moment.
No, it rarely is.
And it certainly isn't just buying the coolest new AI tool you saw on a blog. It's the rigorous discipline of reading the hidden strategic signals in an annual report, mapping those enterprise vulnerabilities to specific startup capabilities, and using a framework like the Business Model Canvas to prove the actual business impact before you ever write a pilot check.
It entirely transforms innovation from an unpredictable art into a reliable operational science.
Yeah.
But, there's one final underlying assumption in all of this that I think we really need to look at.
Oh, what's that?
The entire premise of this brilliant five-step approach relies on the idea that the annual report is an accurate reflection of what human leadership is worried about and accountable for.
Right. It relies on human anxieties fueling the CEO letter and the risk factors.
Exactly. But think about the very technologies these startups are building. Autonomous AI agents, predictive operational analytics, self-healing data pipelines. As these exact startup capabilities become deeply embedded in the enterprise, they're going to take over the analytics. They're going to be autonomously managing the operations and identifying the risks.
Read, really?
Yes, which means very soon the AI will be the one drafting, analyzing, and surfacing the data for the annual reports. How will the definition of enterprise strategy change when the strategic signals we are looking for, the very problems we are trying to solve, are being identified, written, and published by the exact same artificial intelligence we are trying to adopt?
Oh, wow. That is a wild thought to leave off on. We highly encourage you to go grab your own company's annual report or even a competitor's and look at it through this completely new lens. Skip the math, find the narrative, and start mapping the problem set. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey today. Keep your eyes on the road, and we will see you on the next deep dive.